Welcome to Facts Over Fear. I'm really excited to have one of our favorites. I mean, come on, Jess Britvich is joining us. Hi, Jess. How are you today?
Hello, I'm good. How are you, Natalie? Thanks for having me again.
Oh my God, always. I was like, you and I have done so many different types of, commentary. We do a lot of news roundup, but on occasion, we've done a few deep dives. And so we send each other topics, you guys, from time to time about things that like we really want to dig into that sort of overlays with both of our expertise. And we came across this topic called looksmaxxing, and Jess knows a hell of a lot more about it than I did. But when I started researching it, I was like, oh my goodness, we got to do this one. So we're going to do a deep dive on this topic. But for people that may not know much about it, Jess, I'm going to pass it off to you and please educate us.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we're going to get into all of the nitty gritty today, all things looksmaxxing, all things, a lot more fear, a lot less facts today, I'd say, because a lot of this stuff is not factual based, but it's really going to be very interesting to learn a little bit more about this kind of subculture, this incel subculture. And I think it's
Mhm.
something that we all are aware so that we can educate other people around us and things like that. So looks maxing, it's something you might have heard recently. It might just sound like another internet trend, but its origins trace back to fringe manosphere communities and deeply reactionary online spaces. What started as a hyper online ideology rooted in hierarchy, misogyny, and of course, insecurity, as we know and have, it has evolved into a broader culture of self optimization. You
Mm.
might have heard kind of spins on this, such as like wellness maxing, productivity maxing, sleep maxing. I could get behind sleep maxing, maybe. Productive or protein maxing. It's everybody's maxing everything out these days. It's crazy. And this one fringe manosphere ideology has spread far beyond incel forums into TikTok, Instagram, fitness culture, and just really everyday online life and vernacular. But today we're going to dive more into the dark origins of looks maxing, the mainstreamification of self optimization culture, and what all of this really reveals about masculinity, beauty culture, and really the performance of gender. So, a lot to dive into today, Natalie. But before we get into it, I want to play a little game.
Oh, I love a game.
Yes. So, looks maxing. You. I'm not sure how familiar everybody is with that term, but I'm sure there's going to be some other terms in here that people have not heard before. And
Yeah.
these all have originated in kind of like incel manosphere forums. And these are just
Okay.
like very common vernacular. So I'm going to go through them and I want to see if you know what any of these mean. And we'll talk a little bit about each one. So the first one is
Perfect.
is mewing. Are you familiar with mewing?
I can't say that I am, Jess,
Okay,
but
okay.
I can't wait to be enlightened.
Yes.
I'm sure I'm really going to agree with it. So go
So
on.
mewing, it involves it's a technique to try to give you the illusion of a sharper jawline. So it involves
Mm.
putting your tongue on the roof of your mouth, and it like is supposed to improve your facial structure. Actually,
Okay.
apparently, it's something that a lot of celebrities have known for a long time, and they do it on the red carpet. Let me see if I can demonstrate.
Okay. Because I think I'm practicing. I'm trying.
Yeah, like you like suck in this part of your. I don't know.
Interesting.
It's like kind of hard to do,
I mean,
but
okay, mewing, that seems like a level one
it's a
thing,
level 1. It's like
right?
something that's not exclusively to kind of like this incel culture. However, the way that they use it is mewing is a way to looks max. It's
Right.
a, there's looks maxing and then, things you could do to looks max. Mewing is one of them.
So when we're talking about looks maxing,
Yes.
is this specific to like trying to look maximum masculine? Like, is that the lens in which we're discussing that word?
Yes. And we'll
Okay.
get there at the end at the bottom. But yes, that's basically what it is. And you'll see how it all kind of points to that. It's a way to increase your for men to
Appearance.
increase their appearance and therefore their sexual desirability, essentially.
Great.
For
Great.
some,
Go on.
yes. How
We
about
just want you to be nice to us, but whatever. Mew away. Continue on.
so how and that's the thing that we're gonna get into more now. We're talking about so much of this is under the guise of like attracting women, but like, is it though
Is that though?
really, or is it because these forums they hate women. They really, really hate
Right.
women.
No,
So
legit.
how about a Chad? Do you know what a Chad is?
Well, I'm going to show my age because the only time I remember hearing about a Chad was during the Bush versus Gore uh, election when there were hanging Chads. And I
Oh
know
my.
that's not what we're talking about.
So this is a Chad. Basically, you could think of it as like an alpha male. A Chad is a slang vernacular that they use in these forums for alpha male. It's a conventionally attractive, muscular, socially dominant, sexually successful male.
Oh.
Some other terms that
Have
are
they been
used. So
having sex with Chads and then decided they were gonna is this where this
I
I
think
mean,
they're. It's very unclear. It's very unclear how them.
they just think Chad is a name that, like, gets laid a lot.
I think they were just watching a lot of like '90s rom-coms or something, where
I
like
love
Chad was like
this.
or something. I don't know.
I love this.
Um,
Okay.
but Stacy is the female equivalent of a Chad. So a Stacy is like prime woman, alleged, like
Well,
according
one
to
of
them.
my best friends in high school was named Stacy, and she was a 10 out of 10,
She
so
was
maybe
nothing.
there's some truth to that.
Okay, and then a Becky is less desirable than a Stacy.
This is
This is where we're
wild.
getting a little crazy. All right, here's where it
Okay.
starts. Here's where it
Okay.
starts to get. Are you familiar with sexual marketplace value or
Oh,
SMV? I mean, this one's
wow.
kind of it's kind
Wow.
of self-explanatory in there.
This one's giving end stage capitalism for me.
And you can see where as we're it's kind of funny at first, and then you could see how dark, this all
Yes, and just where
goes.
it's going, where it's
So
going.
this is SMV, it's the measure of an individual's attractiveness and bargaining power in the dating world. This is kind of where, like, high value man, value woman,
Mm.
like, derived from. For men in these incel forums, they tend to assign SMV based on 3 pillars for men: looks, money, and status. And the
Mhm.
pillars for women are, of course, youth and physical beauty. And then always comes back to the pedophilia.
Girl, there
And
is a
then there's this
specific lens around all of this, isn't there? Yes.
you'll love this one too. There's this thing called the SMV curve. So men peak in their 30s, whereas women peak in their 20s. Classic. Classic.
You know,
And look.
it's I just hate to interrupt because I remember I'm just bringing this all in as you're saying it, right? Like I've not heard. I swear to you, I've not heard these words before, you guys. This is all new information, at least to me. I'm sure to a lot of you. This is feeling like so sad, Jess. Like there is a sadness here because it's like they're not understanding relationships, right? This is so transactional that you
Yes.
can't get what a real relationship is, which is an exchange of energy, a respect, a
No.
mutual growth.
It's a it's
This is like tit for tat
a
kind of stuff.
Yes, yes, it's
Woo!
something to be considered, and that's actually well, there's actually 2 schools of thought whenever it comes
Okay.
to this. We move right
Okay.
into our next definition. So I'm sure you're familiar with red pill. We talk a lot about red pill ideology on here. But
Yes.
there's also the deeper, darker, it's called black pill, and are you familiar at all with being, like, black pilled?
No.
So this is a more nihilistic, fatalistic ideology. It's prevalent in incel
Mm.
online communities, and they believe that sexual success is entirely predetermined by genetic physical traits. It rejects any type of self-improvement, and
Ooh.
it just believes that, like, inferior men have no chance of romantic success. It promotes a lot of despair, a lot of deep misogyny, and a lot of times whenever you're seeing, like, these incels who are going and committing, like, mass violence against women and things
Mm.
like that, they're black pilled is, like, kind of what it says. Red pill ideology
Wow.
align more with, like, pickup artists, like, tips. They'll align more with looksmaxxing, pickup artists, anti-feminism stuff. They'll say, "If you just get rid of feminism, that's gonna cure everything." Black pill is, like, way more nihilistic, and that's where it starts to get well, they both are extremely dark, but
Yeah, the black pilling, that's interesting to me from like a philosophical perspective because if we're talking about predetermination, if we're talking about a genetic component, that really is in line with sort of this whole eugenics, rise of the Nazis, and then categorizing men into different spaces. Your genetic material is for reproduction, so maybe we're going to red pill you. We don't look at you as a quote unquote desirable. So we're going to use you for violence and for labor, right? And so you can already see how this would schism into a fascist state with these two types of men, one meant for reproduction and one meant for labor and violence, and how it leaves no space for creativity, for friendship, for evolution. And, you know, like my grandmother always used to say, there's a lid for every pot. I mean, there's somebody out there for everyone. So this idea that out the gate, out of the birth canal, you've already been black pilled or red pilled is incredibly nihilistic, to your point. So why would they feel as though there is a future when they've been told they don't have one? What a sad place to live.
And it's this deep, deep, deep sense of misogyny. And they all paint this as
Yeah.
like women are only the surface level kind of thing. And it's like, it's related. Of course, there's so much racism in these communities, so
Oh,
much
yeah.
misogynism, misogynoir, all that kind of stuff. Yes, it gets really dark, but something. So then that kind of leads us to looks maxing. So looks maxing is a subset of all of this. Looks maxing is how you can potentially increase your appearance to increase your sexual marketplace value, to become an alpha man and to attract more women. And it's not even attracting more women in terms of having healthy relationships. It's about how you can sleep with more women, essentially.
Right.
A great book to reference is this book, Men Who Hate Women by Laura Bates.
I'm sorry. I just love this idea of this still image of just Jess with this book.
It's correct.
Guys, we're really going there today. Continue on.
It's a dark read, but it really is going to, I have to like read it in spurts because like,
Sure. Yeah.
well, it really is going to break down all of the nuances, all of the ins and outs of these types of ideologies. It's from incels to pickup artists, the truth about extreme misogyny and how it affects us all. And then here, I'm just going to do a quick little quote about looks maxing. So it's, she says, almost all incels, and for those who don't know, incels are involuntarily celibate. So it's those who feel like they are like systemically disadvantaged because they have not had sex. And they view this as like a systemic problem, not just like you're on, maybe get off the forums and that might help. But anyways, almost all incels take as their starting point the idea of a feminist conspiracy and a deeply rigid sexual marketplace that is hostile to men. However, they divide into fractions when it comes to deciding on the best solution to this situation. Some believe it is possible to overcome their celibacy or ascend, or at least improve their situation by working furiously to better their appearance. This is commonly known within the community as looks maxing, and the practice has spawned enormous forums dedicated to sharing tips on how to best go about it. So, I know. What do you think? What's your initial reaction to that, Natalie?
Once again, I love language and I love her word choice of ascending because it's giving cults, right? And I think at the end of the day, to your point, all of this is very cult-like language. These terms, the way we're talking about men and women and the dynamics, it makes me really, it makes me sad. I think because I'm a little older now and I have a better perspective and understanding on the ways in which men and women relate to each other because I've had a few decades under my belt of understanding the relationships between the sexes, between the genders. And the idea that looks maxing comes into play as a way to enhance their, sexual prowess, so to speak, through doing various things to their appearance. Welcome. That's what women have been trained to do for millennia. Where do you think the corsets and the wonder bras and the makeup and the BBLs and the nose jobs and the face, like, it's amazing to me how when men take an idea, they decide it's going to be this new thing that is for them, and this is how they're going to utilize it. And yet we've been trained to do this for the sole purpose of begging a man to be with us. And here are these men saying now, well, we have to do this in order to get you guys to be with us, theoretically, even though, like you said in that book, they don't like us. And I find it all very confusing from a philosophical, from an existential perspective of like, guys, what are we all doing here? And it just shows you there's a lack of connection between themselves, their sense of a higher self, and their sense to the people around them.
And it really is this, everybody just seems to be performing gender at the end of the day. Which is the
irony of that, Jess.
The irony of men teaching each other how to perform masculinity. Like, and these are the same people who will talk about being an alpha male, talk about how masculinity is innate and like superior and that it's something that comes naturally. Obviously, they hate trans individuals. They hate gender affirming care, all of that kind of stuff.
Isn't this gender affirming though? I mean, that's what's so interesting to me because it's like, right?
You have like, I know you've heard of that kid clavicular or whatever. And I'm not even totally up on all the
Well,
the latest.
what do you want to share? Just because I don't know if everyone, Nick's watching, Nick Valencia. He says, "Preach, signed a man." I'm like,
Yeah.
"Thank you, Nick. We love you. Thank you."
Well, the thing there is, like, he's a young kid. He's, like, 19 or 20 years old, and he kind of rose
Uh-huh.
to fame through looks. His whole thing is looksmaxxing, and he's
Uh-huh.
broken his own bones to try to, like,
Yes.
reshape his face, essentially.
They use like a hammer.
Yeah.
That's what I saw when we were taught. That was like the little deep dive on before the deep dive I saw was that they're actually hitting themselves in the face, like to reshape their orbital structure, which is, guys, obviously, please don't do that. No one should ever inflict any kind of harm upon themselves, but it actually can do a substantial amount of damage to the tissue, to the bone. I mean, you could throw a clot. It could just be ugly.
Well, it is just so interesting how differently the appearance work, the beauty space, whatever you want to call it, gets framed when straight cisgender men are engaging in it. I mean, like you said, women's labor has always been framed. It's emotional, it's frivolous, it's vain, it's insecure. But whenever men are doing it, now it's called looksmaxing, it's biohacking, it's
Right.
strategic, competitive, it's scientific. It like even trends into this like eugenicist language. So,
Uh-huh.
and I think there has to I I think it's really interesting, like, about how it's framed as self-optimization, and I think there's
Yes.
something there between our, like, capitalist system and the way a lot of this is being reframed into, like, this self-optimization, into becoming this best version of yourself that you can sell, and I think that's why because what's so crazy is whenever I'm talking about, this stuff in Men Who Hates Women, the stuff that we're talking about at the beginning, these different terms,
Uh-huh.
they're fringe corners of, like, 4chan and Reddit. How is
Right.
it that looksmaxing is now becoming into the vernacular and it's
Yeah.
trending more online? I mean, we know these spaces like Instagram and TikTok are trending more right wing, but it's really breaking out of
Well,
these fringe ecosystems.
but
And I
I think what I think is happening here, and you absolutely, pun intended, hit the nail on the head.
hit,
Uh, Sorry guys for the
I was
bad joke. But but you did hit on it because as we move into the cannibalistic phase of end stage capitalism, where it is actually a cancer now eating itself, we are in a scarcity mindset. The cost of just existing is higher than pretty much it's ever been for any of us that have been alive in this plane of existence. And you see all of that. There is absolutely no doubt in my mind that this would be happening at this moment because we're trying to recreate that sense of safety net with the nuclear family. Because at the same time we're seeing this with men,
right.
we're at the exact same moment watching women, trad wife themselves
Mhm.
to literal death, as well as taking drugs like GLP-1s, which obviously this is in no way shaming anyone who needs or wants to use that to support their health goals. But when you see stylists from InStyle magazine saying, I can't even get the sample sizes to fit the movie stars now because they are so thin, that to me is another indicator that these cues to look attractive to attract a mate have become completely perverted because of the perversion of the systems that we are trapped in. And I always call it the triangle of death. It's capitalism, patriarchy, and white supremacy.
Absolutely.
And here we are.
Yeah.
We're maxing ourselves out.
No, genuinely. Like we're all maxed out. And there's something about this, like, this self-optimization culture, and, like, we see it every month, like, it's a new month, here's, like, these new routines that are being introduced, it's like lock in or, like, go ghost mode or whatever, and I think that this type of, like, content, this looks maxing kind of stuff, even though it has these really, really dark origins, it lends itself very well to, like, this capitalistic idea, and I
Yeah.
think I
Because we're in panic mode.
yeah, right, right, at the end of the day, which is, really scary, but I think kind of what I wanna circle back to too
Uh-huh.
is the idea of, like, that idea of, like, this is gender affirming care to a degree. Uh,
Uh-huh.
and even though these are the same communities that would reject that language outright, and it goes back
Uh-huh.
where we say this in every single thing, but it's like that idea that hypocrisy is the point, and, like, when
Uh-huh.
disconnect about this idea of, like, performing masculinity and these men working so hard to try to teach each other how to be masculine, and
Yeah.
it's like, why are we so married to, like, these rigid gender roles and like, and
Yeah.
then you yourself aren't even able to naturally prescribe for what you
Well,
think is dominant or whatever.
what I believe that's about to take a crack at that big question of why are we married to these systems is because the people in power have told us to be married to them, and they've used the power of persuasion, this cult like language, like you said, ascending to become, better people. And what they've done is we have done such a good job in this country of destroying the sense of the collective. And I talked about this with Dave Bracey in yesterday's show, um, that we are all in for this sense of rugged individualism because it's much, much, much easier to blame the self for any shortcomings than it is to take a educated view of the systems and say, which you love talking about, that we love talking about, and saying that the systems are causing the issues. And if we dismantle or if we break apart or rebuild the systems, then you don't have to perform gender. But what then are you? And that, I believe, at the heart of this is the real question, is this fear of not knowing thyself, right? And so when people instead tell you to perform a gender, perform masculinity, you don't then have to think about who you might actually want to be or how you might actually want to present. And the idea of free will is so overwhelming when people can't even pay the bills that you can see how it would all become lumped together into this very grotesque mess that we're in.
And it's so rampant, definitely on these online forums where these men are so, they want to blame, instead of looking at larger systemic problems, they blame women
Yep.
as the system.
Oh, honey, yes. That's
And
a go-to.
yeah, yes. Right. And that's really what all of this is. It's this idea that women are the gatekeepers of their sexual liberation. Women are the gatekeepers of their fulfillment of whatever it actually means to be a man. But I love that clip and I think it's from some Jubilee debate or something, or I forget. But she's like, well, who set that system up? Like, who's the one who put that in place? Like, you guys are the one who are locking yourselves in this cage
That's
of,
right.
like, of of these, like, rigid gender norms, of, like, this idea that women are something to be conquered, like, all of this
Yeah.
kind of stuff, and that's, what's it's like they're look they're looking at women as a system instead of looking at patriarchy as the system, which is, like, really extremely frustrating and
Right.
harmful, and it
Be-
leads to so much of this violence.
It does. And I think you totally you called it what it is, because once again it goes back to, it's a lot easier to be mad at an individual
Mhm.
and to blame an individual like the woman in front of you, the woman on your screen, and let her represent all of your woes, as opposed to looking to a larger system that was put in place by very wealthy men who want to keep their wealth and their power and their dominance.
Mhm.
And it goes back to this idea of, like, when you were talking about, this performance of masculinity, if it was so innate for
Right.
men to behave that way, why would you need to be teaching it? If it was so innate for women to submit to men, why have they tried to do this through legislation and violence for millennia? And so I think these are the larger questions that, once again, challenge us to look at the status quo and to ask ourselves, why do we accept a system that doesn't accept us as we are?
When we could all
You
be
know?
liberated, and
Yeah.
for
And
yourself.
also, like, not to, like, get really in the weeds here, but I mean, look at history and look at the types of masculinity that have happened through the centuries. I mean, high heels were invented because of men. Like, men wore heels, and I think it had to do with the way their feet were in horseback. Like, and
I
and the kings wore them. Like, this idea that we've only had these systems in the way that we've had them, and that's it, is ridiculous. Boys used to be dressed in pink,
well, the
not
idea,
girls.
and
That
that's
changed after World War II, I believe. Like, fashion plays into all of this, and all of these things are politicized, and they change as generations change.
and gender is a social construct. That's what we mean whenever we say
Yes.
social construct. At the end of the day, it genuinely is these things that are designed, they're assigned, to women as feminine, that was not always the case. And same with what's being assigned as masculine.
But Jess, do you know what I really think this is about?
Tell me.
I think this is all very homoerotic
Okay, I was
because
gonna get there, Natalie. I was gonna get there too.
do you want to go ahead? Go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say,
She's this is great. I love this.
to say, I it's really interesting how these men, we know these men, I mean, men who hate women, we know a lot of men, they do not like women. They don't like the company of women. They
Right.
don't like what women, the essence of women. They don't like spending their time with women, but
Right.
they see women as something to conquer so that they could go back and look cool and be in the good graces and brag to other men. They really care more about being in like community and being in
Yeah.
being highly regarded by other men. And it's like it's really not about attracting women at all. It's about how can I have women as like a pawn in my pocket so that I look more attractive to other men.
So 100% agree. And then I would take it even like a step further.
Please.
And I would say, this performance of gender and the binary construct that they've created because of their fragile masculinity is imperative. Because what if they fall for a trans woman?
Well,
And that messes up everything. Because now it's like, well, wait a minute. This now what does this make me? And it all goes back to this fear of stepping outside that heteronormative box they put themselves in. So what if you find a trans woman attractive? Like, I think there is such a deep rooted fear of being labeled gay or gay adjacent. And then I'm like, but you set that up. Like, who gives a shit who you like, as long as it's a consenting adult and you both enjoy spending time together? Like, this is why we see Grindr literally explode anytime the RNC is anywhere. It's just like, you guys, just be out. Like, it's okay. It's okay. But there is this, she's all choked up. There's just this fear of just admitting that you might be gay. And I think it's translating into all of this insanity and literal mutilation of their own bodies with this looksmaxxing stuff. When at the end of the day, like, have you talked to a woman? Because the way you're trying to present is probably not even in line with what most women are expecting, anticipating, or interested in.
Well,
and
like
it's
male gaze versus female gaze, like,
yep.
Which I think that conversation's gone a little off the rails too, like on online as well. But it's that whole idea that like what men think are attractive to other women is really just how they view their ideal version of masculinity.
That's it. But
like,
who put that structure in place?
Right, exactly.
Not us.
So
Kenneth is telling us, he says, good conversation. Thank you, Kenneth. We're trying. We're doing it. We're doing a thing.
Yeah.
When you look at where this is all headed, though, Jess, what do you see as the most concerning part of this? Because you've touched on so many major issues here. You've touched on, homophobia. You've touched on racism, and obviously you've touched on misogyny. But where do you see this going if we don't get this looksmaxxing, this incel culture in check? Where do you see the next wave of this, since you are so plugged into these trends?
Well, what scares me is kind of two things, I guess, on like the more community level and then on the macro level. I mean, we know that these, like, we're kind of laughing about this stuff. It sounds absolutely ridiculous, like you have to laugh or else you're going to.
You have to, yeah.
But so much of this rhetoric results in violence against women, violence against the LGBTQ community, violence against really any minorities in general. I mean, so much violence is really attributed to this type of rhetoric, these types of communities. And because, I mean, we kind of laughed about the homoeroticism of it all, but so much violence against the LGBT community is coming out of this deep-seated fear of anything that that expresses outside of this extreme gender binary.
Yeah.
whatever. And that's extremely upsetting and extremely scary. Uh, and I mean, I think of that movie, which I actually didn't watch. I reference a lot of things that I haven't watched because I feel like I'm so plugged into some of the stuff already. I'm like, I can't watch this in my free time.
Yeah.
The movie Adolescence or the short,
Mm.
I think like a mini series. Did you watch that one, Natalie?
I did not. No.
I've watched enough takes and synopses about it and things like that.
Mhm.
But it's a young boy who gets radicalized online, and like I said, I didn't
Um,
watch it, but I believe ends up murdering one of his female classmates because she embarrassed him or something to that effect. And it kind of comes out through the how 6-part series or whatever it is that he at first you're like, this little boy can never do this. This little boy would never do this. And then you start to realize he was radicalized online and he starts
mm.
saying a lot more of kind of this language. So it results in really detrimental, really horrific things at the end of the day. And especially when we're looking at how young boys are being radicalized to these types of subcultures online, you no longer have to go and search. Previously, you had to go on Reddit and like search for these types of communities. Now
Yeah.
we serve this kind of stuff just by scrolling online through your For You page, through your algorithm, through autoplay features on YouTube, that kind of stuff.
That is very scary, and I appreciate that. And it reminded me of that one saying, women, or excuse me, men are afraid women will laugh at them, and women are
Yes.
afraid men will kill them.
Yeah,
And
literally.
and that is very much the truth. And when we're looking at all of this from sort of that larger lens, I think it's just so important to be having these kinds of deep dives, these kinds of conversations, and breaking apart these dangerous sort of echo chambers, and talking about these issues. Because to your point, I don't want to live in a world of this level of fear and violence towards anyone. And what's interesting to me, Jess, as you were talking, I started thinking that this all makes sense as we're seeing the rise of generative AI, as it's overtaking so many jobs, as so many industries will be disappearing. And I think men as a collective are asking themselves, what is my purpose in society? And I think that is a fair question, but the answer to that is not going to be found in the subjugation, degradation, and violence towards the other. Instead, working with women to create a more equitable and free society will allow them to find a place in that new world,
Yeah.
that doesn't require their own subjugation to a system that harms them.
What irritates me though at the same time, but I agree. I know there's all this conversation about the male loneliness epidemic, about men trying to break free from, or like the effects of patriarchy on men long term and all this kind of stuff. But it's also
Mhm.
like frustrating because men are like trying their result in trying to find like where's my place in the world is like results in like this violence and these crazy rhetoric in forums and trying to pass legislation that like oppresses them.
Yeah.
Because that's the other thing I was gonna say too is like it's the violence that I could see coming out of this, and then the larger whenever they're trying to this kind of rhetoric leads to the acceptance of policies on, a national level that's going to really oppress everybody. But anyways, so men are like grappling with these ideas or whatever, and creating a lot of harm out of trying to figure it out. Welcome to life. Like everybody, show me
Mhm.
everybody who's not trying to get like grapple with.
But Jess, but you have to remember, you and I, being women, we've never had male privilege. Like we've never
What I mean.
experienced, you know what I'm saying? It's like we
Yeah,
don't even know what it would be like to just wake up to a system that is completely designed for us. Like that is just, and then if you layer that with, of course, race and class and
right.
immigration status and all the other, the other isms. But I'm saying just at its core, there is this like shock happening to men that because everything has been set up for them. And I'm not using that as an excuse, but I think it's just more of like understanding this is where we're starting from. Is they have no understanding of, how to pull themselves up by their
Right.
own bootstraps,
Because
you know?
like, at the most,
Meanwhile, like Obama said, a lot of people don't even have boots.
What's so frustrating is because that's what I'm saying. It's frustrating, like as a woman, and as a woman with immense privilege too, but like who's had her position told that like this is who you are supposed to be as a woman, and systems literally designed to keep you in that place.
Right.
Grapple with where is my purpose in this world and how can I hang on to that purpose whenever all these systems are against me. These men have every like these white cisgender like whatever men have like they have every resource in the world. And I get it. Life is hard, but it's the same life that everybody else is living with a lot less like privilege. And that's like what's irritating.
Yes.
I get like whatever.
No, honey, I'm with you. I'm totally with you. I'm just saying that like I
No,
think that is where we're at it's like they're looking out from this window that they've never had to look out from before
yeah.
and they go, "Oh shit." And then they go, "Well, this can't be my fault, so I'm going to blame you guys." And that's
To Real Housewives of Rhode Island. Did you watch the
oh,
always a Bravo reference. But there was this
because they're
episode
the
where
best.
Ashley I like they were going around sharing like their deepest, darkest not secrets, but like the most traumatic thing that ever happened to them in their life, basically. And Ashley
It's my
I
favorite moment.
the Bachelor, she's famous from The Bachelor. She's so funny. But she started crying. She goes, I've never had anything bad happen to me. And I know that one day something bad will happen to me. And that really stresses me out.
May we all have that level of problem. And I think that's like the perfect analogy to what we're seeing right now with what's going on with men. To your point, it's like they're stressed out because they've never been stressed out like this before. You know, not that they haven't had their own personal struggles. I'm talking in the collective sense before anybody comes after me. But as we wrap up this incredible conversation, what do you want people to take away from the experience of going down these rabbit holes by even mistake on social media? Like, how do we deal with the bombardment of this kind of information?
I think parents, especially, and I know this from working, me and Natalie are both former social workers. I worked in the school for a little bit, right at the height of like Andrew Tate. And I remember
Ooh.
talking to one of my coworkers who was actually a guidance counselor, and she had a young
Mm,
boy. He was like 12 or something like that. And we were talking about Andrew Tate because all these young boys in school started to like follow him. She
yeah.
went home and asked her son, like, "Do you know who this Andrew Tate is?" And she said, "Yeah, I love him." And she had no idea
Mm,
that he was
yeah.
consuming this type of content. I really want, I think specifically parents, but really everybody to be aware of like how prevalent this kind of stuff is. It really has come out from the corners of the internet, come more into the mainstream, and it really is it's a weapon online. It's like a radicalization weapon online. And it requires a different type of media literacy
Yeah.
that older generations just don't have. They don't realize that this is going on. So if there's one thing, I think it's just kind of familiarize yourself with this. It sounds absolutely extreme and fringe, but it's not as much as you think. And
Yeah.
I think that's kind of step one is at home having these conversations with our loved ones and kids.
I mean, that's why I so appreciate the work that you do in these spaces because you break things down in such a digestible way, especially with your content on Instagram and through conversations like this. And Jess and I actually did a speaking engagement together last week, and she did an incredible deep dive around the rabbit holes of how we get to these spaces and the manosphere, and then what happens to women on that end. And maybe we'll do the deep dive on the trad wife experience.
Oh, I would love that. Block an hour.
Buckle up, everybody. We're coming back with a full hour on that one.
Yeah.
But if you just joined or if you joined a little late, don't worry. I'm going to be posting this pretty much in the next 10 or 15 minutes. So you'll be able to check that out. Jess and I do these both deep dives and then we do news roundups and talk about the news of the week very regularly. You can check out Jess's incredible work. She's all over social media at Jess Britvich. Bonus points if you want to subscribe to our Substacks. Extra bonus points if you're a man and you want to give us a paid
Yeah.
subscription. Pay us for our work, okay? That would be amazing. But as always, everyone, we so appreciate you joining us and being a part of today's conversation. And until next time, I'm Natalie Bencavanga. Please take care of yourselves and each other. Thanks, Jess.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.